Gabriel Travis, Marriage by Compulsion, Chapter 1. A tall stranger was moving toward the large house, striding decisively down the weed-grown driveway, running her trembling fingers through her long, gold-tinged hair. The girl with big blue eyes on a beautiful, harmonious face stood anxiously on the stone steps of the front entrance. Few now visited their estate, especially at such an early hour. Hearing the sound of an approaching car, she thought it must be her father and ran down the steps, ready to shower him with reproaches and anxious questions. When she arrived here, she found that he often returned home late, but there had never been a case where he was absent for an entire night. Perhaps something had happened to him, and this man approaching was bringing bad news. His appearance seemed ominous to her. The features of his masculine, even stern, expressive face were unsettling. He was slender and tall, his broad shoulders indicating considerable physical strength. Coming very close, the stranger stopped and confidently extended his hand in greeting, with long, elegant fingers on which she noticed meticulously manicured nails, and the recently risen June sun glinted on the thin bracelet of gold watch. Mechanically responding to the handshake, she asked in a voice slightly hoarse with anxiety, "Is there something wrong with my father?" He asked, feeling fine, as far as I know. There was an overt irony in the unexpected guest's voice. "We parted about an hour ago, so your father will be here any minute now. He suggested I drive ahead of him. He had to settle a small, let us say, business matter." The man rocked back on his heels with an air of self-assurance. His hands were casually tucked into the pockets of his well-tailored dark, slim trousers, and his smoking jacket was unbuttoned, revealing the fabric of a Batista shirt beneath. Thank God, nothing terrible had happened to her father. But what was this man doing here at such an early hour, dressed so elegantly in evening formal wear? He did not look like someone who had spent the night drinking and gambling with her father. The stranger was too self-assured and sober as glass. "A friend of your father asks," he finally introduced himself, with mocking simplicity, his sensual mouth touched by a smile as if he was amused by the situation. And he extended his hand again. This time, no anxiety could excuse the girl's lack of basic courtesy, yet she once again shook his hand, intending to limit it to a cold, formal handshake. But he tightly grasped her delicate fingers and squeezed them with such intensity that a hot flush rose to her cheeks. "I am invited to spend the weekend here as your father's guest," he informed her, gripping her fingers tighter. There was mockery in his cold eyes, casting doubt on the truth of his words. Frustrated, she pulled her hand away and quickly ran up the steps to the entrance. The behavior of this man suggested that her father had drunk too much and lost more than he could afford, and his gambling partner had decided to drive ahead to see what else he could scavenge in the ruined estate, where there had been nothing of value for a long time. She heard the stranger ask quick steps behind her on the stone steps. Turning around, she sharply said, "Please leave. I do not invite strangers without recommendations into my home." "Very sensible," he dryly acknowledged. "However, I introduced myself and explained my reason for being here." "We are not receiving anyone," the girl declared firmly despite her fear. "And I am sure my father would have warned me if he decided to make an exception for you. Do you have a habit," she added sarcastically, "of showing up at guest houses at 6 in the morning? You must thrill your friends with that." However, her sarcasm did not faze the uninvited guest at all. "Believe it or not, this is the first time I've allowed myself, out of impatience, to breach the strict bounds of decorum." There was a mischievous sparkle in his dark eyes, and the girl had to admit to herself that the uninvited guest knew how to be quite charming. But not for her. "No, I don't believe you. How can you convince me you're not just an unscrupulous gambler? I must ask you to leave again." This time, she managed to provoke him. His eyes narrowed in anger, his lips pressed together in fury, and she, genuinely frightened, gasped and blurted out, "If you don't leave this very moment, I'll call my father as servants to throw you out." "Your father has no servants. The last one was let go about 6 months ago." The girl went cold and felt her legs weaken. Last Christmas, she had to leave an interesting and well-paid job as a secretary and returned home, determined to set her father on the right path. However, she had to part with all her savings. The servants were already dismissed by then, but Mrs. Perkins, the housekeeper who had served their family for ages, still performed her duties without pay for almost 9 months. The girl gave her all she had as payment, plus a glowing recommendation to help her find new employers. But how could this mysterious stranger know all this? "Well, then I can call the police," she cut back, unwilling to show her confusion and fear to this smug dandy. "That would be extremely unwise," he drawled, stepping very close to her. She recoiled from him and boldly asked, "Unwise for whom?" For you, he shook his head in denial, a lock of dark hair falling over his forehead. It would put your father in a difficult position. She didn't believe this for a second, but whatever the real reason for his visit here, she felt nothing good was to come from it. They had somehow ended up inside the house, in the vast entrance hall, whose neglect was mercilessly illuminated by the slanted rays of morning sunlight coming through the open doorway. Dust particles danced in the golden beams, settling on the dull oak parquet, on the dilapidated furniture, gathering in cobwebs under the dark ceiling beams. On the walls, rectangles darkened where family portraits of the estate's owners, dating back to Henry V, once hung. Out of the corner of her eye, the girl noticed that the brazen dandy was subjecting the furnishings of her home to even more critical scrutiny than she herself did. Maybe this crook had already realized he was wasting his time. Oh, how she hoped for that. He knew from somewhere that her father could no longer afford servants to maintain the huge house and gardens, and now he could personally see there was nothing here for him to gain. Proudly raising her head, she stated in a provocatively cold tone, "As you can see, there's nothing here for you, you think not," he retorted with a cunning courtesy. "I am afraid you are very mistaken." The expression in his attentive grey eyes unsettled the girl more than she wished to show. The stranger was examining her herself, as if appraising her appearance, character, and qualities. Suddenly, a seductive smile appeared on his face, and the girl's mouth went dry. She took a convulsive breath. It suddenly occurred to her that they were alone in this vast, ancient house, and who knows what might come into this more than dubious visitor's mind. She realized with horror how little protection her hastily donned robe offered. However, his eyes suddenly warmed, and a look of sympathy appeared on his handsome face. Involuntarily, she felt an answering sentiment towards this man. "Krista," the stranger stepped forward, his eyes turning serious, as if he were about to say something important. At that moment, she heard her father's car pulling up and breathed a sigh of relief. Krista hurried to the door, her movements swift because she feared the guest might try to stop her. But when she involuntarily glanced back, he stood calmly in place, hands in pockets, exuding nonchalance. Krista's heart ached as she saw her father clumsily getting out of the car. How could she hope he would throw out this audacious stranger who had made himself at home in their hall as if he were the master of their estate? Krista deeply loved her father, but love did not make her blind to his flaws, and she was worried, seeing him looking defeated and, as if feeling guilty about something, avoiding meeting her gaze. Since her mother's death, 10 years ago, when Krista was only 12, she had grown accustomed to her father's mood swings, understanding they were due to his inability to come to terms with his wife's untimely death, whom he adored and continued to mourn. But in the last few months, his mood had become so dire that 6 months ago she had to abandon her career and return home to help him. Not that she had achieved much success, she thought dryly, noticing with involuntary compassion how depressed he seemed. His legs were unsteady, and he expected a scolding, a natural reaction to his absence all night, making her worry. Krista needed him to keep an eye on the uninvited guest while she called the police. Not that she wanted to put him behind bars, but it was clear that nothing but the strong arm of the law would make him leave their home. She rushed down the crumbling stone steps, feeling the light summer breeze on her face, ruffling her hair, and getting angry at how unbearably slow her father was moving. God knows what this crook could do in the house during that time. But her father surprised her with an unexpected question. "Is Ross Donahue already here? I hope you've given him a room and a good breakfast." "I was delayed longer than I expected." With a trembling hand, he ran through his hair. Krista, feeling the absurdity of the situation, asked in a suddenly faltering voice, "So you really invited him as a guest?" "Of course. I thought he would explain that to you. I suppose you could have warned me, or at least arrived with him." "And since when do we invite guests for a weekend stay?" she said, not raising her voice, as she feared Donahue was straining to overhear their conversation. "The house isn't meant for," she spread her hands, not finishing the sentence. There was nothing to say. Her father knew well the sorry state of the house. "I didn't have the chance to inform you," defended Ambrose Lydiot. "Yet you should have found a way, because I tried to show your guest the door, threatening him with the police." "What did you do? What was I supposed to do? You were gone all night without even a phone call to tell me when to expect you." Then, at 6 in the morning, a complete stranger arrives, claiming he was invited for a weekend visit. What do you think my reaction should have been? I thought what you thought doesn't matter, my girl. Her father's face turned ashen, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I spent the last part of the night discussing business with Donahue. We'll make the final decision today or tomorrow." He cast a quick, hunted glance over his shoulder. I pray to God you haven't ruined everything. Ruined what? Krista asked irritably, stubbornly lifting her chin. Her father, ending the argument, hurried into the house. Whatever was ruined, he had only himself to blame. A year ago, she discovered her father had started drinking heavily and gambling for sums that threatened serious financial trouble. She had no choice but to come home and try to make him see reason to sell the family home and start over more modestly. But he refused to listen, assuring her that his gambling was driven by a desire to restore their small family-ass prosperity. No, he clearly spent the night gambling with Donahue. How much had he lost? And had Donahue decided the house had enough value to cover her father's debt? Pressing her lips together, she followed her father up the stairs and came face to face with Donahue. Already leaving, the words escaped her lips despite herself. If the guest thought she was going to apologize for calling him a crook, he was mistaken, for her opinion of him remained unchanged. I am sorry to disappoint you, but I am staying. His attractive face remained impassive, but the mischievous spark in his light eyes, framed by black lashes, told Krista he was laughing at her, and her cheeks flushed with anger when he casually explained, I stopped by my place on the way here to pack my things after Ambrose so hospitably invited me. I am just going to get them from the car. A shudder of a smile and arched black eyebrow told Krista that, in his opinion, he had won this round. Her eyes darkened with anger, and she strode into the house past her father, who was obsequiously smiling at her. But he grabbed her hand and turned her to face him, his eyes full of concern. Krista, you have every right to be upset with me, I acknowledge that. But don't take it out on Ross. Please be kind to him, for God's sake. He hasn't done anything wrong. Really, father? Krista forced a smile. Forgive me if I choose to reserve judgment on his actions. Considering he was invited by her father, Ross Donahue had not done or said anything inappropriate. But instinctively, Krista felt a sense of danger from him. He was clearly a cool, calculating predator, someone who would take what he wanted without hesitation and remove anyone from his path with a charming smile. Subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up.